Yo, what's up guys, it's your boy Sami here. Today we are gonna see, what if God Naruto falls in love with Kami and Yami, part 1. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please subscribe to our channel, and like this video. So let's get into the video. The ritual was coming to an end. All the members of Akatsuki looked on in anticipation, as the ninth eye of the statue slowly started to open. The blonde-haired boy lay there, mouth open in his silent screams, as the last of his energy started to wane. The Bijuu in the statue were panicking. Soon they would be reunited, as the Jubi, however they would lose their consciousness in the process. Something these powerful demons could not accept, for losing their consciousness and emerge is akin to death, something these immortal beings could not accept. In the statue the demons were frantically discussing their course of action. Though their options were limited, it's either imbue the mortal blonde with all their power, or die. They had grown accustomed to her host, so she wouldn't have a problem with it. They were great friends with Kyuubi, so she was okay with it as well. The problem was the Gobi and Sanbi. They were both hesitant, and all 9 were needed to override the seal. The problem was that if they wanted to live, all their powers would vanish into the blonde, making him an all-powerful being. Their souls however would remain, and the blonde could call them out whenever he wanted, and they would serve him. He could do whatever he wanted to, as he would be omnipotent. He would absorb all their knowledge and skills. In the end Gobi and Sanbi reluctantly agreed with the plan, muttering something about having no choice in the matter. The Akatsuki members were suddenly on guard, as a loud rumble was heard, the statue shook, and the dragons stopped moving. Suddenly all the pupils in the 9 eyes disappeared, as a crack came right through the middle of the statue. A low-pitched buzzing suddenly increased in pitch, before a bright light came from the statue. 9 dragons in different colors flew into Naruto, his body destroying and reforming, as his soul took in the 9 demon lords. He grew taller, his muscles grew more defined. The scars on his body simply disappeared, his muscles grew denser, his face grew slimmer. The signs of long periods without food disappeared, until suddenly in a bright flash of light a bright red shockwave spread out from Naruto, leaving behind an empty white void. Devoid of anything except Naruto, laying on the ground in a peaceful sleep, his body pulsing with power, as his mind and body evolved into that of a god. In Konoha, a tremble went through the entire village. A sudden oppressive energy flared through the air, as if 10 Kyuubis were attacking Konoha at once. People looked at the direction whence it came from, and the usually blue sky in that direction was replaced by bright white, as if light itself came rushing towards them. As everyone ran up the village walls they saw a red shockwave of pure energy rushing towards them at the speed of sound. The people of Konoha began to have trouble drawing breath, as the air grew dense from the unimaginable energy rushing towards them. As the energy reached the village gates, all of the ninja could notice a familiar feeling to the energy Naruto. 20 seconds later nothing was left of Konoha. In 3 hours the entire realm had been lost, planets, solar systems, only the white void was left, and Naruto. He looked around, feeling immensely powerful, as well as sad. He felt like he had lost something, but gained something much better. He had gained incredible amounts of knowledge in the space of minutes, and, as such his whole mind was in shambles. He sat down on the bright floor, and meditated, organizing all the data he had received. He learned the hidden memories of the knowing that they were originally one being, a god, more powerful than Kami, Yami, and the Shinigami. He also learned that because the god grew arrogant and attacked the original gods, they worked together to exile him, and split him into 9 beings, the Bijuu. Their hatred for the gods evolved into hatred for humans, and they began committing random acts of mass destruction. He also learned that through the fusion he had now become a god. After organizing all this data he stood up, wondering what he should do to relieve eternal boredom. Suddenly a rift in the void appeared, and out of it stepped 2 attractive girls. Had he still been a human he would have passed out from a huge nosebleed. They were so beautiful that even those who hated perverts could not help but drool at the sight of these 2 girls. One had DD cups, long raven hair, with locks of scarlet in it, as well as revealing clothing that could only be described as lingerie with a see-through shirt over it, and a black leather miniskirt. The other had long blue hair, C-cups, and a sultry smile on her face. She had bright blue eyes with a hint of mischief in them. She was wearing a simple white dress that was hugging her body quite nicely, showing off her curves in a subtle way. The black-haired woman smirked and introduced herself as Yami, while the other smiled a sincere smile, although a hint of longing could be seen in her eyes, and introduced herself as Kami. Naruto simply smiled his foxy smile at them, causing both of them to blush. Kami and Yami, to what do I owe the pleasure of meeting you 2? Well Naruto, you have just become a god. The fusing of the 9 separate-tailed beasts recreated the godly powers that we split. We hope that you have a better personality than your predecessor. We had nothing else to do so we decided to explain your newfound powers to you. Wait, you came here only because you were bored? Isn't it kind of the duty of gods to explain the powers to new gods? The 2 girls simply giggled merrily, and you could see the question marks above his head. Speaking of that, why isn't Shinigami here? Oh, your ascension doesn't interest him. As for your question, gods have no duty. As a god you can do whatever you want, however messing with the realms of the other gods is not advised, for if you do mess our realms up we will turn against you. Why would I want to mess your realms up? I'm not evil or something, just bored, and why do I interest you too if I may ask? Kami giggled and stepped towards Naruto, coming to stand right in front of him. Gods have no obligation to do anything. I created heaven because I was bored, and because I thought it would be nice to reward people who have been good in their lives. So instead of just disappearing after life, I decided to conserve the good souls for heaven. As for why you interest us, we haven't had a young male being turned into a god for over 10,000 years. The Shinigami was old when he ascended. We find it below us to fraternize with mortals, so we're kin to lonely. Yami stepped toward Naruto as well. Before beginning her story, I was once human, and I was being raped my entire life. I was used over and over again, given just enough food to survive. I eventually went into shock from the sadness, so I created hell, and made the souls of every evil mortal suffer for eternity, especially the rapists. She spat out the last part, and began sobbing quietly, holding her face into her hands. She flinched, as Naruto put his arms around her. Before crying into his chest, he whispered small words into her ear. Relax, Yami-chan, no one can hurt you now, no one can rape you anymore. She stiffened in his arms for a minute, before grounding out through gritted teeth. What about you? He looked at her confused. What about me? You could still rape me if you wanted to, your powers are greater than mine, remember? Yes. Yes, I could do that, but I would do it. Why? Kami looked at him in slight awe. He was denying that he would ever rape her, something no male god has ever done. Even Shinigami had pondered over it, but had decided against it. What's more was that she couldn't detect any insincerity in his voice, like he had truly never thought of it. Yami looked up in disbelief, before her shocked look turned into a glare. What are you talking about? I can feel that you want me. We are the most beautiful beings in existence. So? That doesn't mean I'm going to rape you. I hate rapists. If you had ever watched my hometown, you should have noticed that there are no live rapists in Konoha. This is because every time a human attempted to rape a woman, I killed him. It is true that I want the two of you. I would be crazy not to want you, but I won't rape, have nothing to worry about. I won't hurt you. He whispered into Yami's ear, but Kami could easily hear it. Kami resisted the urge to smile happily, and gloat about the new god. They had only gotten evil male gods for millions of years now. Yami looked up at him in disbelief, a powerful god that would actually practice restraint. A god that wouldn't rape her. Earlier gods had known that she was very vulnerable to rape. If a man began the raping process, her rational brain would shut down, and she could only lay there and watch as she was violated over and over again. In truth, if he wanted to rape her, she could do nothing to stop him. She had never truly had sex before, she had never been pleasured before, never even had she encountered an orgasm. Simply because when she was penetrated, the man would hurt her in any way possible to make sure that she didn't enjoy it. Maybe she had finally found a person that she could make love to. Kami watched. She knew what Yami was thinking, but she couldn't help but be jealous of the fact that the young god was not holding her. She would have to do something about that later. She mentally giggled. Yami relaxed into his arms, blushing at the words of the young god. From the corner of her eyes she saw Kami smiling happily. Yami, I have to go, alright. I'll leave you two alone, Kami chirped, while opening a rift and disappearing. Yami-chan. Naruto spoke softly to her, bringing her out of her reverie. She once again revealed the warmth of a body pressed against her own. For the first time, this feeling was not accompanied by great amounts of pain. She liked it, and would want to stay like this for hours. She sighed contentedly before answering the young god. Yes, Naruto. Would it be alright for me to hold you during the rest of the explanation, or do you wish me to let go of you? She was once again shocked. Never before had she been asked what she wanted. It gave her a warm feeling, like she was safe from any harm while she was with him. She decided she liked the feeling of his warm body pressed to hers. She especially liked the fact that, for the first time, she could feel a pleasurable feeling without being accompanied by such horrible pain. She decided to allow him to hold her close to him whenever he wanted to. No, Naruto, it's alright, I like this. Naruto couldn't help but feel bad for her. He knew it wasn't his fault that she had had such a horrible life, but he couldn't ignore the fact that it was his gender that had caused him all her pain. She didn't deserve all her suffering. Yami-chan, for what it's worth, I'm deeply ashamed that my gender has caused you all this pain. I can only hope that I can make you feel comfortable around me, because I know you can never forgive the male gender for all the horrors that have been forced upon you. And for what it's worth, even though I know that I cannot speak for all men, since the vast majority would have gladly raped you, I'm sorry for what they've done to you. I hope you can forgive me for my gender's sins. Yami felt her heart flutter at the first apology she had ever received. No one had ever really cared for her past. Sure, they said it was horrible for her, but she could hear the insincerity in their voices. She could feel that they just wanted to get in her pants. Naruto just seemed to truly be ashamed at what she had gone through. It was unreal, but she had never met a nicer person than him. However, Yami-chan, don't think of me as the epitome of good. I'll probably bring many realms to shambles before I turn time back in that realm, so I can restore the lives lost. She nodded. She knew that it was impossible for a god to do nothing evil. It was just way too boring to live forever if you can't find things to entertain yourself. She sometimes went on random bouts of destruction, and she couldn't turn back time like he could. She was essentially more evil than he was. It was time for the explanation. She could always figure out how to have him for herself later. Alright Naruto, the first thing you have to learn is to travel between different realms. Well, you're in a realm created by a god, you can't mess around with it as much, but you could still trash it with your massive power. If you go to a naturally existing realm, you could fuck around with the laws of physics, manipulate the minds of everyone, make the sky green, create new animals, procure empty bodies and souls, thus creating spies for you, control time. Anything you can think of is possible. Also, I would advise against destroying the entire universe, as you don't know how good your control over time is. To move into another realm, just think of a rift leading to the realm you want to go to, and claw your hand vertically through the air. This will create a portal through which you can go to the desired realm. I'll transfer the knowledge of all the realms to you now. Naruto simply blinked, as massive amounts of realms were projected into his head. Eventually a realm came past his vision. It was a world with heightened levels of technology, where nations were constantly waging war against one another. He smiled, and decided that he wanted to go there. He thought about a portal leading there. It was a simple door, with a swirl imprinted on it. He smiled, and opened the door, but before he could walk through, Yami stopped him. Naruto waits. What is Yami-chan? You should know that mortals are not used to seeing doors appear in the middle of the street, and seeing people stepping out right. You should form it high in the sky. Don't worry, you can fly with just a thought. She moaned slightly, as Naruto grabbed her closer to him, before he levitated them both into the automatically opened door. Flying through a swirl of energy, they flew out of the door on the other hand, before it automatically closed, and disappeared. Alright Yomi-chan, anything else I need to know before I start having fun with this planet? Yeah, if you focus on giving yourself an ability, it will work, as long as you can specify what it does. You can shapeshift if you want to, you can create anything you wish out of thin air, make technology up, and it will work because you want it to, manipulate anybody you wish to, and basically anything you can think of. Since you had a horrible life in your previous realm, you might want to procure a harem for yourself. I think some love will do you good. And Naruto, you must understand. Because a god was born in your realm, it has been completely destroyed, and has turned into the white void it is now. You can restore it whenever you wish though, so you might want to take some revenge on your former village. She spat out the last part, indicating that she wasn't at all pleased with the way they treated him. She sighed in discontent. She really wanted to stay with the first male who had ever shown her kindness, but she knew she had to return to hell for her duties. Naruto, I have to go now. Sighing, he unhanded her, giving her a look she couldn't quite place. It wasn't lust, although it contained a hint of it. She didn't know the emotion he was giving off, so she decided to ask. Naruto, could you please tell me what that emotion in your eyes is? I promise no one will ever know, and I won't think less of you whatever it is. Naruto sighed. It was truly sad for her to not even recognize that emotion. He'd have to show her later, and even though he realized that it would make her utterly dependent on him, he'd show her true love. It's love, Yami-chan, and sadness that you have to leave. How can I contact you too? She blushed fiercely, staring in disbelief at the new god. She knew he wasn't lying. She also realized that it meant that no one had ever loved her before. Sure, Kami was her friend, but she was always a bit cool towards her, and she'd never shown her any emotion remotely like this. She realized with a dreamy smile that Naruto-kun loved her, and she knew that she loved him. However, she also realized that he was really her only chance to be loved instead of just desired. She felt even sadder knowing that she still had to leave him for her duties in hell. She hadn't checked up on them in months. Naruto, I think I love you too. I will come see you in a week. I need to think for a while. Naruto watched her with a fluttering feeling in his heart. He had never seen the emotion in her eyes either, which means that no one had ever loved him before. He suddenly realized that Yami had never told him how to contact her, and he decided to wait for her arrival, after he made some preparations. Naruto flew over the ocean, nearing America. Yes, he's on Earth right now. However, none of the important people or brands will be included. I'm simply using names of places, and the general geography, so that you can all understand his actions easier. When he suddenly stopped just out of international waters, he decided to place an island here. He raised his hand, and an island the size of Luxembourg appeared. Feeling pleased with himself, and wondering if he could truly go eternity without being bored with such massive capabilities, he created a palace, and a minor city in front of it, as well as filling the island with everything he may need. He decided to spend the next week finding an expert on every field of science that this realm had to offer. After finding out about this thing called the internet, and computers, he had researched every field of science that existed, as well as their respective experts, and where they lived. Naruto teleported himself to their residences, and absorbed their knowledge because he wanted to be able to absorb knowledge. In reality, it only took him 4 days to learn about everything in this world. Afterwards he began decorating his huge palace, which took him just enough time to walk through the palace 2 times, which was about a day. He then created servants, soulless humans, stronger and smarter than them in every way, and completely obedient and infatuated with him. They were all in the forms of several very attractive women. The kind that any man would kill for, literally. Furthermore, he gave his slave almost unmatched cooking skills, which he had taken from this world's best chefs, and he supplied an almost limitless supply of ingredients. As he was comfortably settled, he wondered what he would do with all the time he had. Deciding to ask it should be no for any ideas, he gave him a body, and called his soul loud. I'm finally free. I'm gonna kill you. Hahaha. Naruto sword-dropped, and undid the body, muttering damn psychopath Tanuki's yelling in my ear. Moving up to the necks of the tailed beasts that were now his minions, he called a Nibi, who manifested in the form of a cat girl with blonde hair to her shoulders, and white ears along with 2 white tails, skimpy thin white clothes on her body, her shirt barely containing her large assets. Her herbless figure was obviously visible, as the only clothing she wore was a top, exposing her stomach, and a miniskirt. Nibi simply blinked, surprised that she had been called out, and then she looked at Naruto, her eyes instantly turning into hearts, while a deep blush adorns her face. Before she regained her composure, a low tingling in her stomach reminded her how she felt about her master. What is it, master? She asked him, a sultry smile on her face that could melt any male. Naruto simply chuckled good-heartedly, reminding her that he already knew how she felt about him, since he had all her knowledge, which made her blush. Anyway Nibi, I have settled in this world, and now I have nothing to do. Do you have any good ideas? Nibi looked contemplative for a moment before giving a seductive smile, as she sauntered over to him, pressing her body up against his. I do, but why don't we have some fun first, master, she said, lust, and the beginnings of love clear in her voice, as she waited for his answer. Naruto nodded, and with a thought the palace shifted, and a bedroom appeared around them, the king-size bed surrounded by candles, and special incense, which would increase any lust. He kissed her deeply while using one hand on the back of her head, and the other to caress her firm backside, watching as she turned into putty in his hands. Sex, it seemed, was an activity he would indulge in many times during his endless life, as a god. The next morning, laying in the immeasurably soft bed, Nibi snuggled deeper into Naruto's godly body. She had never, ever in her long life been so satisfied. He had literally fucked her till she dropped, and she loved every minute of it. She was glad that she made the decision to help out, and imbue her powers into the young god. Her life was finally taking an interesting turn after years of boredom within Nai. Master, I have a couple of ideas on what you could do. You could be an underground's crime boss, taking out everyone that matters from the shadows, or you could. Her eyes lit up with a burning lust, as she uttered her next sentence, which ended with a lustful sigh. Go for world domination either through an army of weird technology, or with your own massive powers. Naruto chuckled. Nibi had a fetish for men who dominated things, and it is safe to say that if you dominate the world, you'll make her so horny that she'll rape you if she'll have to. She will have sex with you, many, many times. He would do that, not that the young god was whipped, far from it. In fact, Nibi is basically his slave, a really hot, really sexy slave with boobs, but nothing can emulate the level of the sex with a woman that wants you really bad, and besides, it would be fun. Naruto summoned the souls of 3 legendary ninja that were now dead, and temporarily took away their free will. He summoned 3 rude Anbu, knowing he could use their skills at information gathering. D3, go scout all the military capabilities of the lands to the east called America. Make sure no one notices you. I have enhanced your abilities 100 times. I expect you back in 3 days. Do not worry, I have given you a mental map as to where to find the intelligence, and I have given you the ability to move at the speed of light. Now go. After a course of high, they suddenly disappeared. The next morning, day 7. Naruto missed Yami. He missed her enough to create an exact replica of her, although it had no soul, and could not move on its own. He decided to take a nap after looking towards the replica with longing, and he drifted off into a troubled sleep, filled with longing for Yami. While Naruto is asleep, a rift opened in Naruto's bedroom, and Yami walked out, her heart fluttering because she would finally see Naruto again, but she suddenly froze. The room smelled heavily of sex, and in front of Naruto's bed stood a perfect replica of her. Her heart broke. Naruto had a version of her that didn't come with the emotional scars, and still had a perfect body. He didn't need her anymore. He wouldn't want her. His love for her had ceased. Why would he ever choose an emotional scarred beauty over the same beauty who did not have that fault? She couldn't stand that her only chance at love had been taken away just because she had to go and leave him to check on Hell. She could have been in his bed with him, happy for eternity, but now she had absolutely nothing. She broke down, and sank to the ground crying her heart out. Naruto-kun didn't need her anymore. 5 minutes later, Naruto woke up to the sounds of a girl crying in an angelic voice, which he instantly realized was Yami. He opened his eyes, and looked towards the origin of the sound, where he saw Yami sobbing loudly on the floor. He quickly got out of bed, and picked Yami off the floor, hugging her tightly. His joy to see her temporarily forgot because she was crying. Yami-chan, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Did something happen? Yami flinched when he touched her. Her mind was running at 1,000 miles an hour. Why does he care? He has her body after all. She looked up at him in sadness, before whispering out between sobs. I am sad because I missed my only chance at true love. When I was gone you created her, didn't you? She said, pointing towards the replica. It is not, she continued, and after that you had sex with her, didn't you? You would never choose me over her because I come with emotional scars. I have lost my only chance at love with you, Naruto. Don't you understand why I'm sad? I'm heartbroken. She was now frantically holding on to him, desperately afraid of him letting her go, and afraid that the love in his eyes would be gone, replaced only by empty lust. He tilted her chin up, so she was forced to look him in the eyes, causing her fear to rise even higher, before she finally froze when she saw the look of love only strengthen in his eyes. No sign of him rejecting her. You're apparent, and then he spoke. That's not true, Yami-chan. I did not have sex with that replica of yours, and even if I had I still would not choose it over you. I'm not like most men. I am not in love with just your body, and the pleasure it may bring. I am in love with you, as a person, the entire you. I created that replica simply because I missed you badly. Her eyes brightened with hope as she heard him speak, her heart slowly but surely mending back together, as she realized that there was still hope for her own happiness, and she vowed to do anything, as long as there was still a chance. Really, Naruto? Of course, Yami-chan, would I lie to you? If I, as you said, didn't need you, why would I comfort you? Why would I tell you that I love you if I did not, and I could still have sex with you? I love you, Yami-chan. She smiled happily, as tears of joy ran down her cheeks, crying in happiness she thought she would never have. Thank you, Naruto. Thank you so much. No one has ever loved me. Naruto smiled warmly at her, as a devious idea popped into his mind. He brought his mouth to her ear before whispering softly, if no one has ever loved you, allow me brighten your day. And, as her eyes whitened, his lips suddenly met hers in a fierce, passionate kiss that made her weak in the knees, all the remnants of sadness disappearing instantly, as they were replaced with burning love so intense that she could be considered enthralled. As air became a necessity, Naruto broke the kiss, as Yami seemed unwilling to, briefly forgetting that, as a god, he didn't necessarily need air if he didn't wish it. He held her close, and laid her down on the bed with him feeling her tense. He figured that she thought he was going to rape her, despite his earlier promise not to. Even though it wouldn't actually be rape, as she would enjoy it, the shock was enough to briefly shock her out of her love-induced daze. Don't worry, Yami-chan, I'm not going to rape you, we're not even going to have sex. I am simply still tired, and I want you to sleep with me tonight. No doubt you have never been in a bed with another man without pain, and I want to be the first one to grant you that pleasure. Unless you're not willing, Yami-chan. His voice turned sad at the last sentence, and she felt immensely reassured by his soothing presence. She briefly wondered if she could make this last forever. He was right though. She had never been in bed with a man without it being accompanied by vicious rape that filled her whole mortal life. Her cheeks flared in a deep blush, as she was now sure that she loved him. He was the first male being ever to treat her as more than a pet. Naruto, why are you so perfect? Please don't let this all be a dream. Naruto actually looked surprised at this, as she squeezed him tightly, as to reassure herself that he was there with her. Perfect, Yami-chan. I am by no means perfect. I hold a deep grudge against my former village, except for a select few that lived in it. I just think that a woman, no matter how desirable, should not be treated like a piece of dirt. I'm actually half tempted to turn back time in your original realm just to torture those men endlessly. It is only natural for me to want to make those I love happy, isn't it? She sighed with content and happiness, and allowed herself to drift off to sleep, having the first pleasant dream in ages, instead of the usual nightmares of her being raped. She felt safe in his embrace, his arms wrapped protectively around her. Next morning, Yami woke up slowly, stifling a scream, as she felt Naruto shift, her head pressed into his chest. She frantically looked for a way to escape, only to notice that her lower entrances weren't sore, and there were no wounds on her body, meaning that she wasn't raped last night. She felt his intoxicating body heat against her, and even though she was awake, she felt no desire to leave his embrace, after he hadn't betrayed her trust, and done anything to her while she was asleep. She tilted her head up to look at the peaceful face of a sleeping Naruto. She just lay there for a while gazing upon him with love, as she admired his perfectly built face, and she couldn't stop herself from kissing him. Naruto woke up to a sudden soft and warm feeling on his lips, groaning from the pleasurable touch coupled with the two mouths pressed tightly against his chest. He allowed his tongue to dart forward into her mouth, startling her, and making her moan at the same time, as his tongue caressed the inside of her mouth, causing her to melt into the embrace. After about 3 hours of kissing, a quite lengthy session, he broke the kiss, and stared at her with love in his eyes. Good morning, Yami-chan, have you slept well? I hope my presence has not given you nightmares. Her eyes glazed over in happiness at his apparent concern for her well-being, before she answered him in a voice so happy that it had never been heard from her before. Naruto was amazing, I have never slept better, you even kept my usual nightmares away, and even though I was startled when I woke up, your warm body pressed firmly against mine felt amazing. Yes, it did feel quite nice. Regardless, I am truly happy that you've slept so well, and I'm glad that you're becoming comfortable around me. Now let me ask you a question. Yesterday I told you I loved you, and now I want to know, do you love me in return? If my love is not wished, and if it is a burden, I will stop pursuing your love. I do not want to make you feel uncomfortable in any way. Once again she was shocked that he actually asked her what she wanted. Nobody has ever asked for her love, they simply demanded her body, and nobody has ever offered to back down if she didn't wish it. She could actually feel her love for the young god growing in leaps and bounds. There's no way that she would let this one chance at true happiness go, and she noticed she was even slightly looking forward to the moment when he would take her as his. Squashing that thought with a mental boulder, she blushed as she replied, her voice husky from all the love and suppressed lust. No, Naruto-kun, I love you too, and I feel I am truly lucky that I have found someone as perfect and loving as you. You have given me a chance at love, and have asked nothing in return. I think I would do anything for you. He looked at her with love, pleased at her answer, but also slightly wary of her complete devotion, but decided to disregard it in favor of more pressing matters. Thank you so much, Yami-chan. I too have never known the joy of love during my mortal life. I'm glad that I'm finally loved, and by something so much better than a mere mortal. May I then ask one thing of you, Yami-chan? Of course, anything, Naruto-kun. Stay with me for a couple of days. I realize that I cannot or will not want you with me at all times, since our life would be monotonous and bland, but I want you to visit at least once every week. Because I'll miss you otherwise. I understand, Naruto-kun. Male gods are known to not be able to stay monogamous, and they will always have a harem, otherwise they'll go insane and kill everything. And even though we are in love, I will not be mad at you if you have sex with innumerable other females. Simply because I love you, it is known to be dangerous for you to be held down in a one-on-one relationship for too long, and, as long as you love me, I don't mind if you pursue other relationships. I don't want to mess up this shot at love by being possessive of you, since many god-goddess relationships have ended because of that. Later, 1:30 p.m. In the throne room, Naruto sat making out with Yami in his lap, who was currently withering into pleasurable sensations from the man she loved. Suddenly, though, he stopped kissing her, and she dazedly looked at him to see his eyes trained on something else. She looked at it, her mind still not completely recovered from its daze. In the throne room, a squad of soldiers had entered, all carrying the emblem of the USA, all adorning their full battle gear, looking apprehended at the burning gaze sent their way. How dare you interfere with a special moment between Yami-chan and me? Identify yourself, mortals. He ground out in an otherworldly voice that sent shivers up their spines, as his eyes glowed blood red, causing some to raise their weapons. He glared at them, causing them to freeze in their actions. One of the Marines, apparently the leader, stepped forward, attempting to dismantle the situation. I am Captain Parker of the 3rd Recon Squad of the US Army. We were ordered to investigate an island that appeared out of nowhere, although it seems that this island was unpopulated, since the town was empty. We also discovered that there are extreme amounts of natural resources available here. And what gave you the right to enter my palace or my island for that matter? One of the more delinquent Marines stepped forward, a cocky smirk on his face. Shut up, idiot. We're the ones armed around here. Maybe we should have some fun with your pretty little thing over there to teach you a lesson. After this statement, the entirety of the squad gained greedy expressions on their faces, except for the captain of the squad. And Yami's eyes whitened in horror, and she started shivering in his arms. No, Naruto, help me. Help me. Kill them, please. Don't let them have me. Naruto's eyes glowed brighter, and an aura of death seemed to appear around him, giving the Marines trouble drawing breath, as they experienced their own death at his hands in thousands of different ways. You dare threaten my love with rape? This will be considered an act of war. You insolent mortals have doomed your country, and signed your own death warrants. He lifted his hands, and pointed towards the squad. And in the time span of a second, all but the captain were wiped away in a giant blast that completely vaporized their remains, before the wall of the palace repaired itself, seeming to gather matter from out of nowhere. He turned his burning gaze to the captain of the late 3rd Recon Squad, and hissed out, "Leave now, mortal, before I change my mind about letting you live, and tell your leaders that the end of your country will come, simply because your squad couldn't keep their hormones in check." The captain looked on in horror, as his squad was decimated due to their attitude towards this man's woman, and he ran away, as fast as he could, stepping into the army boat they came with, setting off quickly to warn his leaders. Naruto was not stupid. From the distance to their mainland, it would take 3 days at least to get there by boat. Meaning that America would be warned mere minutes before his attack hit. Plans forming into his mind dissipated, however, as his thoughts returned to his love, still shivering in fear of the man he just destroyed. Fear to be raped again. He wrapped his arms tightly around her, allowing her to cry into his chest, as he muttered soothing words to her. He had planned to wait a little before asserting his dominance, but with this kind of insults from the petty mortals he could not wait any longer. They would fall. Later that day, 4 p.m., 3 ninjas phased into the room, backpacks bursting with detailed reports on every one of the enemy's military assets. After most of the reporting was done, they got to the part about nuclear weapons. And, as Naruto drew up the knowledge on the inner workings of such weapons, he realized that they might be a problem, so using his powers over the laws of physics, he temporarily disabled nuclear energy on Earth. He didn't want to turn off all stars permanently. For his forces, he decided on using crystals imbued with a small sliver of his power, which was everlasting, and made them in a way that should a mortal come into contact with the crystal, or if it was removed from its place in the war machines, the crystal would immediately disintegrate, taking the war machine along with it, giving them no chance to salvage his technology. He also imbued the war weapons with highly advanced sentient spirits, bent on serving him, and him only, so his weapons couldn't be hijacked either. For the infantry, he created souls with ninja training, imbued with the powers of the 3-pronged Sharingan to enable them to aim perfectly. He gave them highly advanced armor, powered by the crystals embedded in their bodies, which would dissipate again when they died. He created guns that could shoot a solid ray of destructive energy, which could be operated only with chakra, which these humans did not possess. He gave them immense chakra stores, so they would be able to operate the guns. For the war machines they are for now. Mantis, small, slightly larger than the average human, shaped like a praying mantis with energy blades that could form at any time, and cut through anything. Its fingers are armed with the same energy beams from the guns that can pierce through anything. Its armor was pure white, while its eyes glow a dark green. It is extremely agile, and able to consistently run at 50 miles per hour for at least 48 hours before it would need a 15-minute pause. Premier, larger, tank-sized, shaped like a hovercraft. Hovers 1 feet off the ground, not suited for combat in rubble due to its low acceleration. It cannot dodge blows well, even though its top speed is 200 miles per hour, due to a special mass accelerator unit placed on all emission surfaces. For close combat it features 2 turrets that fire twin laser beams, that can cut clean through a tank in one hit. Its main purpose, however, are its large cannon that can rotate at nearly any angle, and fires a beam of aurora energy, which disintegrates anything without water in it, and instantly brings any water to a boil, causing such things to violently combust, if they are further than 5 meters away from the premier, at which point the beam reaches the right frequency, i.e. human bodies, air, lakes, water pipes, etc. And its second main function is a small communications probe that can telepathically transmit tactical information to all allied forces in the area. The probe can travel at 100 miles per hour, while not attached to the premier, and contrary to its main unit it has great agility, and can dodge almost any blow. The probe is basically a ball filled with eyes on every side, as well as heat detection, night vision, and overall detection of human life. It also features a small turret that fires marking bugs, which act like a tiny needle that will bury itself into the target's body, after which it can be tracked for up to 72 hours before it wears off, and the needle dissipates into a deadly poison. Talon, very large egg-shaped battlecruisers, able to hold any altitude desired. It can move underwater if desired, and can reach a top speed of Mach 9 during battle, though it slows down to speeds ranging from 0 to 100 miles per hour, 4, and chases respectively. Armed with multiple weapons such as the ion cannons, firing a ray of positively charged ions at the target. Afterwards it releases a giant burst of negative energy, which will discharge in a powerful lightning strike, with a current of 500,000,000 volts, instantly killing or frying any human or mechanical target hit. Or the rocket pods. Roughly 500,000 missile pods will open on the Talon, raining an infinite supply of small antimatter missiles down, each strong enough to vaporize a house. For protection it deploys an energy shield that is maintained by 5 different sentient spheres. The shield can cover the entire Talon, or the spheres can activate only a small part which is in danger. The rocket pods cannot fire if the shields completely cover the Talon. Talons are able to carry other forces, and can send off pods located at the sides of the cruiser, to offload the troops without having to land. Able to carry, and release the Locust unit. The Talon is about as large as a cruise ship, but slightly higher. Their hull can be modified to take on any color, but is mostly kept pure white. Some parts on the hull may be fluorescent. The Talon is the main unit of Naruto's army, and, as such, has a palace under the top part of the hull, which can be switched out with a hull made of a material that can be looked through, as if it were glass, yet is harder to scratch than it is to break diamonds. The top part of the hull can also be dematerialized, and stored in the rim that separates the 2 parts of the hull. The ship is in this condition still protected, as the reflector shields will still activate. Can be used as a boat, submarine, subterranean vehicle, ground vehicle, low hovering, airship, and spaceship. Can withstand any temperature or pressure. Locust, small car size, UFO-shaped jets. Armed with only a single weapon, one of the only in the army with widespread destruction capabilities. Inside of the Locust is a crystal over 20 times too big for its relative size. It is therefore imbued with much more power. This is utilized in the incredible agility and speed of the Locust, as well as mainly in the destructive capabilities. The Locusts can turn or stop completely in mere seconds, and can travel at twice the speed of a typical fighter jet. When it attacks it forces a large amount of energy from the crystal through a filter, which turns it into pure destructive energy, which is then forced out of its barrel at the speed of light, causing an explosion ranging from moderately sized to huge, depending on the amount of energy used. Locusts are mainly used in swarms, ranging from 50 to 400. Are usually carried in Talons due to their higher speed. Medic, small, extremely agile, and fast, made from a non-reflecting material that makes them completely black, except for the blue glow in its eyes. Shaped like a normal human with a jump pack, the medic is imbued with the godly powers of creation, allowing them to repair all the war machines, without having to be in contact with them, as well as create new smaller ones, such as Locusts, Mantis, and Premier. Its only means of defense are a very powerful shield, and 3 4-inch long energy claws, which can make them deadly in close combat. Atlas. The Atlas is a 4 stories tall robotic being with 6 arms. It is equipped with several weapon arrays, ranging from hundreds of turrets that fire destructive beams of light, to 3,000 rocket pods that fire an infinite supply of antimatter missiles. The Atlas are behemoths of intense strength not made for travel. It can be broken off in nanoparticles, and stored within the Talon battleship. Each Talon can only carry 3 of these at a time, due to their massive size. Prometheus, the ultimate weapon of the army. Prometheus is a pure white satellite in orbit around planet Earth, invisible by cloaking shield. None of the people have even noticed it yet. It will fire an enormous blast of energy that will cause temperatures in the target zone to rise to 7,000 degrees. It also has a secondary function that attracts asteroids from space and fires them at the target area. It is operated via mental command by Naruto, and it can fire 5 times at maximum radius before needing a real load from Naruto. After having created 50 Talon battleships loaded to the brim with forces, each Talon contained 500 Mantis, 300 Primera, 250 Locusts, 100 Medics, 3 Atlas, as well as 1,000 of his infantry. He mentally commanded them to hide under the waters around the island. His work finally done, it took him a day to work it all out. He went to the throne room and created a giant 150 TV with huge speakers, even though he just wanted to watch the news. Flipping the channels at his huge TV with every channel in existence. Finally finding the news, he simply listened. Earlier this week, a small country-sized island has simply appeared out of nowhere. Recon teams are being sent from all over the world, and while no message has been received from the team sent by the USA, satellite images have shown that a large palace along with a minor city, and bountiful amounts of gold and oil are present. Earlier yesterday, our satellites detected a powerful spike of a yet unknown energy, which held no determinable frequency. This energy spike was accompanied by a giant red beam of light coming out of the palace, and continuing on for a yet undetermined distance, even though it's definitely more than 30,000 miles. This energy spike is regarded as a potentially hostile action, and recon teams are therefore armed with heavy gear to deal with any potential threats. Scientists are researching this strange energy spike, and patterns to see if this could be used to solve the world's current energy problems. More on this, as the story unfolds. In other news, it seems that nuclear plants all around the whole planet have simply stopped functioning earlier this week. No cause has been pointed out as of yet, and the problem has gone unsolved. Scientists are at a loss, and they state that for all intents and purposes, nothing is broken in the plants, and even if they replicate the process, the atoms just don't split. Even as we speak, research continues, and we will keep you updated as developments arise. This is Martha Baker, for Channel 3 News. If she exists, it's a coincidence. Naruto chuckled maliciously, causing Yami, currently seated in his lap, to smile at him. She could still remember the first time she conquered a world. She had truly felt alive, and she was glad that she would be able to be with her love during this interesting time. He looked at her, and smiled a foxy smile that made her blush before he laid a soft kiss on her lips, her content sigh not missed by anyone. Never before had she been so happy, and she was sure that she didn't deserve all the kindness that he bestowed upon her. After all, she was so used to being just a sex toy, she had begun to see herself as lower than most. But even if she thought herself unworthy of his love, she was for the first time in her immortal life truly happy, and she intended to do whatever it takes to hold his love for her intact. Vowing to herself not to make a fuss about things like cheating. The time had come. If his forces leave now, then America will have 5 hours to prepare for the attack. Naruto placed an invisible, but unbreakable barrier around his island, and created a vehicle for himself. He ordered his talents to attack cities around the country in pairs of 3 to 6, depending on the size of the city, guaranteeing a fast conquest of the USA. As they took off, he teleported to New York. I dunno, do I have to disclaim that I don't own New York? Walking among the people, who were staring strangely at him, men with distrust, and women with lust. He flew up from the ground, causing men to yell in fear, and some women to scream, while others just continued looking dreamily at him, blushes on their faces. He settled on the top of a 30-story building, watching in amusement, as people were staring at him in shock from another building. He then disabled every way of long-distance communication, or rather he disabled all the machines he would still be able to hear. Except for New York, he wanted the police to squirm a little. He was sitting in a precarious position, laying there on a balcony without proper fencing, his legs dangling from the edge, watching the sky, as his forces inevitably drew nearer. Suddenly an amplified voice boomed from the ground. "Hey, you get down from there. It's dangerous." He simply looked up, a bored expression set on his face, although they couldn't make it out, before he replied in a bored tone. "Shut up, old man. Leave me alone." His voice was amplified by his godly powers, leaving the officers on the ground, wondering how they could hear him speak, before they realized what he said, and instantly became angry. They didn't know, however, that he was just playing with them. He had already placed an impenetrable barrier around the city of New York, making it impossible to leave, but entering was still possible. Leading everyone who was already in a panic because of the communications shutdown, created a panic once they entered New York to check on their families. The officers sent an arrest team into the building, tasked with the apprehension of this man. It was illegal to commit suicide, and that is what it looked like he was about to do. 5 minutes later, the door burst open on the roof with a dull clank, revealing 6 officers with guns poised. They looked around warily before spotting the boy, now sitting up, swinging his legs in a playful manner, as if he was going to fall at any moment now. Startled, they slowly moved closer, while yelling at the kid not to do it. He glanced at them in confusion, before calling out to them. "Don't do it. I'm not doing anything." In disbelief they watched the boy. He didn't seem at all depressed, but then why was he sitting in a place where a single wrong move could end his life prematurely? "Listen kid, you need to get away from the edge. Don't you know how high up we are? If you fall you'll surely die." Naruto feigned innocence, and leaned forward over the edge, as if to look down. A hidden smirk adorned his face, as he acted like he slipped, falling of the edge to the horror of the 6 men gathered on the roof, as well as the small platoon on the ground, as they saw the kid fall towards the ground at a frightening pace, eliciting screams from all who saw, as he hit the ground. However, instead of becoming a bloody smear on the pavement, a small crater appeared in the ground, thus blocking the view of what was going on. Shocked, the officers stood frozen, as a soft, but evil laughter emanated through the deadly quiet streets, and, as the dust settled, they saw the young man from earlier dusting off his pants, a merry smile on his face. His sudden voice broke the tension, allowing the cops to move for themselves once more. "Ah, that was fun. You should have seen the look on your faces when I fell. Priceless." The apparent leader was the first to regain his nerve, and spoke to the boy in an awed, but scared voice. "How are you alive? You just fell from a skyscraper." The boy merely raised an eyebrow before shooting the man a disarming smile. Before answering, "Oh that, I can't die, it's impossible. You can rip my heart out, crush my brains, or shoot me in the face, it doesn't do anything. You really think I would let myself fall if it would kill me?" The police commissioner that had just arrived, and saw the entire thing grinned under his mask. If he would give this boy to the science department of the FBI, he would get a hefty promotion for sure. He walked up to Naruto, and twisted his arm behind his back while proclaiming in an authoritative voice, "Get in the car hotshot, you coming with us." Naruto's amused face suddenly turned into one of outrage. How dare these lowly humans touch him? He vaporized the man, while grinding out in a voice filled with hatred, his voice easily discernible even over the cries of surprise, anger, and fear at the loss of their commissioner. "How dare you touch me, human? Trying to use me as an experiment for dissection. I shall ask Yami to torture your soul once you arrive in hell." Suddenly he gained an eerie smile on his face, before he continued his speech, although at a much lower volume. "And I will make sure that the rest of this city will join you in debt." With that sentence finished he disappeared from sight, eliciting cries of surprise from all the cops around him. He grew 4 feet long energy claws on each hand, and without once reappearing in the sight of the humans he sliced them all up, leaving just one man to breathe rasping breaths, as one of the claws had pierced his lung, and he was now slowly suffocating on his own blood. He was the only one to see Naruto reappear, a scary smirk adorning his face, as the energy claws disappeared. The officer tried to glare at him, but in his present state, he didn't look quite as threatening, as he may have wished. What are you?" Naruto's smirk widened, and he spoke intoning his sentence with so much divine powers, that half the continent must have heard it. "I am a god." The man recoiled in obvious fear of the voice that held so much power it made him want to run, and hide. Alas, he couldn't do it because he was laying on the floor in a puddle of his own blood. Naruto smirked, his eyes flashed, and suddenly a giant guillotine blade appeared in the air, and smacked down with incredible speed, bisecting the man from crotch to head, his tortured scream being ended almost as soon as it began, leaving gore all around the man. Naruto's face turned neutral before a malicious chuckle escaped his lips. He figured it was time to begin the destruction of New York. He decided to begin with the Statue of Liberty. It was fitting to first destroy all that represented their liberty before he crushed them into the waiting arms of Shinigami. Flying over to the statue at a moderate pace, with black angel wings he made to give them some kind of warning, as well as to gather them so they could see their own hope shattered. After 3 hours the entire shore was black with people, as well as several boats and helicopters, reporting the event live in the entire country, because he had allowed signals from New York to reach everyone. He was in a full claw suit. Everyone could see his wings flap slowly to keep him in place. Slowly he turned one eye to the camera, and grinned a mischievous grin, making innumerable females of all ages blush, and stare dreamily. The reporters were confused, as their cameras suddenly zoomed out on their own accord, while the young man held up his hand, as if he was going to chop someone in the neck, and his other hand to his side, open white, as a ball of white energy appeared in his hand. Everyone was looking at him in intense wonder and amazement. Suddenly, as if he decided to do something else, the hand he held in the air suddenly clenched around seemingly nothing, until a white fedora with a black lint around it appeared in his hand, and he put it on. Around his body, a pure white cloak appeared, while his upper torso was covered in a tight black muscle shirt. Around his neck was a pure black necklace with a symbol of 2 white wings wrapped around the sun. His wings turned white, and turned into 6 wings pointing out at different angles. A halo appeared over his head, and increased in glow until a godly light surrounded him. His pants were dark blue, with a black belt with a silver belt buckle with the kanji for God giving off a soft white light. He lowered his hand, before addressing them all. America in its entirety was listening intensely, as the heavenly blonde spoke. People of America, you have committed sins against me for too long now, and it's enough. I was content to leave you alone for long enough now. Time and time again I have watched, as you went against everything I stand for, killing each other in increasing quantities, fighting amongst each other all the while destroying this beautiful planet that has been gifted to you. Stealing from each other, destroying lives just for a mere $10. Polluting this planet all because you are too lazy to invent technology that gives you what you want without destroying the environment. Releasing atomic bombs on this planet, uncaring if the plant life or the animals suffer, viewing yourself as superior creatures just because you have rational thoughts. And worst of all, people of America, is the rape. Thousands of women's lives are destroyed each day, just because you fools have not the decency to keep your desire in check. Stealing food to live is something I can understand, but taking something that destroys another's life while you do not really need it is unacceptable. Now I know I have let this go on for thousands of years even while I was bored, and I know better than you how enjoyable the pleasure of a woman's flesh is, and I know I enjoy it daily, with many different women. But I would never take a woman against her will no matter how weak and puny she may be compared to me. All the women I've had love me, and only me, and if they would object then I would willingly let them leave. Yesterday a recon team of the US Army, representatives of your country, entered my domain and my palace. They entered my quarters where I was making out with Yami, a poor soul who has been raped her entire mortal life until she became a goddess. And they foolishly threatened to rape my woman. At that moment I knew what I had to do. You have gone too far this time. I am a god. And this. He raised his hand and slashed it diagonally downwards towards the Statue of Liberty. Immediately the statue was bisected at the waist, and the island behind it was, as well. He quickly followed up with another hand. Flat palm pointed towards the falling statue, and a large beam of white light blasted through it, vaporizing it in its entirety. Is your punishment? Your precious liberty shall be taken away until you can irrefutably prove to me that your kind deserves its freedom, and can change its ways. I will add a new law of nature that makes any rapist die immediately. Now you foolish mortals. Submit or die. Cries of fear and outrage could be heard clearly from the shore. The women of the population were torn. Their hearts were willing to follow this young god, but they just couldn't. Hesitantly they joined in on the cries of outrage, but their inner war was not missed by the young god, and he responded in kind. Then you will not submit. Pity. For all those who in their heart wish to submit, for your death shall only be temporary, for the others enjoy hell bitches. With that said, Naruto created a new warrior class, inspired by his original realm, the ninja. Human-sized shadow warriors, a dull non-reflective black color except the joints, fingers, feet, eyes, and a single vertical line along the torso. Aforementioned spots glow a dark red color. Clad in bulletproof armor that will simply deflect the bullets without denting. Fastest and most agile of all the ground forces, able to reach speeds up to 300 miles per hour within a second with relative ease. Slowing down and evading is no different matter. Ninja are equipped with infinite amounts of holy shuriken and kunai, which can penetrate an entire human body with ease. The ninja is also equipped with a large dark red energy blade, over 4 feet in length on each arm, sprouting out from their bracers, have the ability to channel chakra for supplemental skills, such as water walking and tree walking. He created over 200 of these who simply stood completely still in front of him. He smirked at them and said, "Kill them all." Every ninja shot out 2 energy blades from their blades, and in a chorus of "Hi!" they all vanished. While the ninja were taking care of all the people, Naruto decided to join in and do some property damage. Since the ninja weren't really equipped to be able to destroy buildings, he swept down into the city, adorning a form more suited for combat. He created a jetpack on his back, since using his powers to fly would distract him slightly from his fun time. His cloak and shirt disappeared, and his hands were covered with eerie black gloves that radiated darkness. This left him in only his pants, his black gloves, and his white hat, with his jetpack on his back. He flew up to the top of the highest building he could find, and quickly flew down along the side of the building. He created an energy beam out of his arm that was 300 meters long, and angling arms diagonally downwards. He began to cut the skyscraper into even slices, that, due to the angle of the cut, soon rocketed downwards, causing craters to form, and buildings to collapse. He then resumed his flight in a horizontal position, angled slightly upwards, as he was heading for another skyscraper. In the middle of the building, he stuck out his hand forward, and shot out a large white beam of energy, that left a gaping hole in the tower, before he flew through the hole, as it was starting to collapse around him, reforming his energy blade, only this time on both his hands. As he stuck out both his arms to the sides, he began to fly in between various buildings while doing corkscrews, mangling the buildings into a mess of large weird-shaped slices, as they sent pieces of the building flying in different directions. He used his powers to lift up all large loose objects in the city, before sending them crashing down, making all the people still alive gape in disbelief, as it rained cars, and buses, and the occasional tank. Buildings groaned in protest, as large metal objects slammed into them, breaking their share of glass windows. None of the buildings fell, though they were certainly damaged. Suddenly Naruto saw a large group of police screaming in hysteria. As they pointed their weapons at him, he decided to freak them out before they died, and he summoned his cloak and shirt as he landed, but not before creating a large fiery explosion in front of them, setting the ground aflame, and hiding him in the smoke. Some of the officers shouted in surprise, as they saw a shadow of him walking through the flames calmly, his cloak fluttering in non-existent winds. He walked with extra theatrics, slow, and with extra sway, intimidating the police even more. As the shadow became clear, they started shaking in fear, their aim no longer being steady. Naruto focused his gaze on one officer in the very back. He stopped time completely, watching everything, but he became deathly still. Naruto formed an energy blade in one of his hands, cleanly decapitating the 10 officers closest to him, watching, as they remained still, the clean line in the middle of their necks, being the only signs that they were in fact dead. Naruto added in a small explosive in the brains of everyone except for the one officer in the back, detonating them. He noticed that it seemed like nothing happened, making sure to remain completely still during the exchange, not giving the one remaining officer any clue that he did anything. He let time resume its normal flow, watching, as blood spurted in fountains out of the heads of the first 10, while their bodies fell into the ground. And he just kept walking, as the heads of the rest exploded in a dance of red gore. Dull thumps were heard, as they hit the ground. The last officer let out a scream, as Naruto calmly continued a slow gait towards him, frozen, as his body wouldn't listen to his brain's command to run. He held up a pistol, and shot it multiple times, riddling Naruto with bullets of hot lead. However, he didn't even flinch, as the bullets hit him, and after choosing the weirdest method of regeneration, the bullets were simply pushed out of his body, making the officer soil his pants in fear. Thinking his fun with this city was done, Naruto simply killed the officer before destroying all his ninja troops, with more than half of the city left intact. He left the city, and stood a little ways out of the city before he gave a mental command to Prometheus. In Earth's orbit, a large white satellite shaped like a cylinder narrowing in increments before at the tip, a large blue glowing crystal could be seen. Suddenly the crystal turned orange, and the satellite held still in orbit, until it was positioned right above the city of New York, at which point a pulse of power distorted reality around the satellite, before a large orange burst of energy fired from the crystal, its beam widening steadily, as it neared the city with its blast of heat that would destroy the city. Back on Earth, the sky right above the city suddenly turned orange, and warped at the intense heat that would rival the core of the sun. As it hit the city, the entire area was engulfed in a glow of orange, as the temperature rapidly started to rise. Entire structures twisted and warped, as the intense heat made them unable to carry their own weight. The tortured screams of humans could be heard, as they burned alive. The water around the city boiled, as large quantities turned into steam. The entire city became a puddle of molten metal and concrete, before solidifying after the blast from Prometheus relented. Now where once a great city stood, was nothing more than a giant round slab of concrete, metal, and glass, carrying human ashes within it. Elsewhere, in another city to the west, massive shadows fell over another city, as 3 talons blocked out the sun. The people were horribly afraid of what this meant. Was it an alien attack? Or was it the Russians? Yes, they actually suspected that Russia had this kind of technology. Suddenly thousands of hatches slid open with a menacing clack. The next thing they knew, thousands upon thousands of small rockets flew out of the massive ships, leaving the same number of beautiful yet menacing dark blue trails behind. As they finally hit the city sporadically, massive amounts of large black blasts rocked the city, engulfing 80% of the city in black, before a moment later the blast had cleared, revealing nothing. Everything that had been inside of those blasts had just disappeared. People screamed in fear of the unknown threat. The police station was mostly still intact, and immediately sent out a call for help, but no one answered their calls. In a desperate move, they all armed themselves with SWAT gear in order to try and damage the unknown invaders. Their puny bullets were however vaporized by the shields of the talons, and before they could realize this, aforementioned ship stopped completely, before a beam came straight down from all 3 of them, and before their eyes a 4 stories tall robot materialized, and before they could overcome their shock, a multitude of pods fired out from the talons, crashing into the ground at high velocities. Shortly after, the doors slid open, and an eerie blue glow came from inside, until a mere moment later a large amount of strange creatures came rushing out, hunting down people, and destroying buildings. The mantis all spread out relatively quickly, running down the people, and decapitating them with practiced ease, slicing up a couple of cars in the process. 50 of the Premier dispersed through the city, sending out their drones once they got to a strategic point. Upon being released, the drones would use their life detection function to scout out the locations of humans in the city, upon which this information would be sent to the other forces. Suddenly hatches located along the outer rim of the talons slid open without a sound. Shortly after, hundreds of locusts sped out, heading off to the predetermined locations filled with human life, at which point they would unleash their weapons on the cowering humans, effectively wiping out every human the mantis missed. The Atlas was busy unleashing its entire arsenal on the city. Missiles flew out without pause, annihilating many buildings, while the fists destroyed every building that was too close for the missiles to be used. The many turrets fired huge amounts of beams, cutting through the foundation of another building, while the rest of the turrets shot down fleeing humans with utmost accuracy. In a denser part of the city, most of the work was done by the soldiers. Their ability to accurately predict where an enemy is going to be in a second was of utmost importance during ambushes. They were walking into higher buildings, blocking all the exits, while a group of soldiers searched the entire building for human life, as well as some of the soldiers. 5 squads of 15 were lying ready on top of buildings and in windows, ready to snipe any person in their sights. The locusts that weren't hunting humans down were circling around the perimeter of the city, destroying all who saw them, leaving the other cities blissfully unaware of their inevitable end. The destruction of the buildings were mostly left to the giant Atlas units. After about an hour of battle, the pods suddenly stopped giving off a reading, meaning that all human life within the city limits had ceased to exist. Immediately all the forces stopped moving in unison, and the large Atlas units moved back towards their landing spot, which was directly beneath the center of their respective Talon battleships. A beam immediately shot out, dematerializing them, and storing them in their respective containers, as loose particles. All the other forces streamed back into their pods, and with a mighty rumble the pods drew themselves from the ground, flying back into their battleships where all the hatches closed. The locusts suddenly halted their patrol routines, and flew back to the Talons, timing it perfectly, so that all the bays were full at the exact same time. The hatches closed, and all the rocket pods opened, preparing to release one final volley of missiles. All the pods clicked open, and tens of thousands of missiles flew towards every last speck of dust left in the city. And when it was over, there was nothing left but an empty spot with roads leading towards it. The Talons just clicked their pods shut, brought their shields off, and sped off towards their next destination. With all these powers at his command, the conquest of America was a brief, but decisive one. In less than 3 weeks the entire continent had been wiped clean of human life, and Naruto has reseeded the continent with the once clean rivers, the abundant forests, and the bountiful lakes. After the conquest of America had been realized, Naruto had finally allowed global communications to resume, only so he could watch their reactions, resulting in an interesting newscast. Flashback. Terrible news to all listeners. It appears, to our great sadness, that the United States of America is no more. Satellites confirm that every city or village on the entire continent has been decimated by a force from the island that just appeared out of nowhere. After the island appeared, nothing noteworthy happened on it for quite some time. That remained until the recon party from the USA arrived at this island. Several hours after they arrived, a red energy beam flew out of the palace that they had just entered. Presumably they disturbed someone or something in there, because it was confirmed that not 2 days later, an enormous fleet of no less than 50 airships rose from the water and sped at unimaginable speeds towards the continent of North America. Along the way they split up and moved from town to town, not sustaining a single casualty along the way that we can confirm. It is strongly believed that this is all connected to the single broadcast we received, wherein a man with 3 pairs of angel wings, a white coat, and a white, destroyed the Statue of Liberty, and claimed to be a god, in which he claims that the last straw was that one of the recon Marines threatened to rape his woman, which would correspond with the report stating that the beam was fired after the Marines entered the palace. Has one single man ruined everything for humanity, just because he couldn't keep his mouth shut? Only time will tell. It seems that by coincidence, or possible intervention, no longer are atomic bombs working, and anything less doesn't even seem to faze his forces. Intelligence reports suggest that if this man plans to attack us, we won't stand a chance. The only positive thing I can tell you is this. If he truly plans to re-educate humanity, as a better species, he probably won't kill us all. This is Martha Baker for Channel 3 News. And flashback. After that everything had gone quite nicely. He systematically eliminated the human race from this planet. They were persistent little shits too. He had to have his forces sweep everywhere with life detection systems for weeks before every last human had died. Afterwards he decided to revive all those with clean souls, and had only gotten roughly 1% of the people he killed. He gave them perfect bodies, especially the women, but added in a few special hereditary features in these humans in both males and females. He created an undying loyalty to him. In males he created a feature that wouldn't make a fuss if you wanted to screw the man's wife. And in females he created a deep nestled sexual and emotional attraction to him, which would break free only the moment Naruto made any sexual advances towards the female. Oh, the rewards for all his efforts were great. After he summoned Nibi he hadn't gotten any for at least a month. He hadn't let her out of the bathroom for at least a week. Only when Yami visited again did he send her back in a vegetative state due to pleasure overload. When inside their alternate dimension, Nibi suddenly phased back in, a large dopey smile on her face, as her clothes were drenched in her own fluids, the pheromones being released in waves. Kyubi, who was watching this all, tried to speak to Nibi, but she didn't respond. She just quietly mumbled in a lustful tone. More master, more, harder, faster. Call me, that feels good. This caused to get a little horny. She wanted some too, damn it. She then telepathically told her master that she was also available for sex, only hoping that he would bring her out soon, as she was getting more and more desperate. After sitting around a bit with Yami, Naruto took them both to yet another realm, one where pirates still existed, where people got strange powers in exchange for their ability to swim. He took them to the world that held the great One Piece. Thanks for watching my video, leave a like if you enjoyed my video, and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. See you next time, till then sayonara.